Once you've identified an organization and a protagonist and had your first meeting, it's really important to zero in on a topic for your case as soon as possible. If you choose the right topic, the case writing process can be very straightforward. If you do not choose the right topic or don't choose any topic, it gets much, much harder. So, when you're thinking about a topic, you have to sort of revisit your stage one objectives and consider these against the various ideas that have been floated, usually in the first meeting. Uh, if you're trying to write a discussion case, what you're probably looking at is a topic relating to decision making, and this can sometimes be used for exercise cases as well. If your objective is to increase the world's knowledge or impart knowledge to your students, you may be dealing with a case that's a better fit with a research topic or maybe a walkthrough objective. If the organization is just interested in you highlighting something that they've done and telling the world what a great job you've done, then we're talking about a showcase. Now, sometimes this is a reasonable illustration example, but most of the time, researchers shouldn't be writing showcases. That's something they can hand off to their marketing department. Finally, if they want you to create something that is totally imaginative and has nothing to do with what the actual situation is, I refer to that as a fable. And run, don't walk away from those situations. As you consider alternative topics, another thing you might think about is the sequencing options. Uh, Most of the time when I'm writing a discussion case, I'm looking for sort of a standalone. So I want to present this particular discussion and then prepare the case based on that. And I don't worry too much about whether other things happen after I'm done writing the case. For a lot of research cases and for some discussion cases, it's useful to have a kind of a staged sequencing where you actually come back and look at the situation longitudinally. For research cases, this is particularly powerful because you can take observations and then the organization takes action and then you can take other observations, and based on that you can make an argument for cause and effect. In discussion cases, it can also make for a very compelling case study because your students are frequently interested in what happens after a decision has been made and what the actual decision was. And this is something that naturally fits into a staged approach. In my book, Informing with the Case Method, I introduce a problem-solving model developed by Herb Simon and Alan Newell, referred to as intelligence design choice. And it's somewhat similar to other models such as Bloom's taxonomy, but it has three fundamental skills. Intelligence, the ability to absorb information and make sense of things. Design, the ability to actually create possible alternatives. And choice, the ability to evaluate alternatives. And none of these three skills are necessarily better than the other skills. However, each case is going to have an emphasis on one skill or another, particularly if you're talking about discussion cases. Now, intelligence cases usually involve the ability of the folks discussing the case to make sense of a situation. I tend to use these fairly sparingly because I like cases that are focused around a decision if I'm going to discuss them. But I do from time to time use a couple of cases where really it's not a matter of coming up with alternatives or choosing between alternatives. It's a matter of understanding the situation. That's the principal thing you're trying to achieve. And there could be some value in sense making as a skill you try to develop. A design case is one where there's a decision to be made and the people discussing the cases need to come up with their own alternatives. So you don't give them the alternatives. This type of case, I think, is very effective when you're dealing with a group of people who are very familiar with the context of the case and have a lot of experience because they're in a position to actually come up with reasonable designs. I would tend to use this structure a lot if I were providing cases to executives. I'd probably use it less if I were focusing on developing cases for use by undergraduates. Interestingly, though, a lot of times cases can be used by both groups, but most of those cases tend to fall into the third skill, which is the choice. And choice is the ability to evaluate different alternatives. And in these cases, typically you have a decision that needs to be made and you frame a fairly comprehensive list of alternatives. Now, you can always leave room for the possibility that the student might develop their own alternative that's better than any of those that you've presented. But for the most part, these cases involve weighing the expected costs and consequences of different decisions in order to make a sensible choice. As I said at the outset, all three of these skills are valuable, so don't think of one as being better than the other. But I think if you're starting to write cases, the choice cases are probably the easiest to construct. Most of the time, when it comes to topic selection, I find that there is a single topic that dominates all the others, and so I focus on that. If you have more than one topic, though, you're going to have to weigh them against each other. But what I would begin normally doing is choosing a preferred topic and then writing an opening section. Now, in the Journal of IT Education discussion cases, we have a very strict formalism. The first page of the case always summarizes the decision and the context, and then the remainder of the case, which can often be 20 or 25 pages, including exhibits, fleshes out things and presents the context in greater detail. What I would argue is that you want to give your protagonist this first page and before you write anything else, because if the protagonist decides, wow, this is interesting, they've captured the heart of the decision in this page, then you're probably good to go with the rest of the case. If, on the other hand, the protagonist says, well, this isn't really the decision that I'm interested in, or wants you to do something different, then you may want to think about going on to a backup topic, or in some cases, maybe trying to find another organization. I discourage people from going into a case unless the organization is really committed, because if your case site is not committed, the odds of you're actually completing the whole process are relatively low. Once you've gotten this preliminary approval, then you can kind of inventory the data sources, stuff that is available to you through the organization, and also stuff that is available through your research library or the internet. Because obviously the more information that's written, the less time you'll have to spend in the company interviewing people and gathering additional data, because if the organization perceives that it's going to take a lot of their people's time, it's going to be much, much more difficult for you to get them to go ahead. Then, once I've done that, I would probably outline the case study, identify what I see the key sections as being, and then provide that to the protagonist as well, and make sure everybody's on the same page. If they're okay with that, then I think you're good to go, and it's time to actually start the next stage, which is data gathering.